weekend. Can Khalil Rountree actually get this done? Let's take a look.
We needed Alex Pereira to fight a banger in Salt Lake City.
Khalil actually has the higher knockdown rate.
Alex is going to be prepared for that. There's no way he's not going to do his homework and be prepared for that. But I feel like when you get in front of a guy like Alex Pereira, he's staring at you and you staring down the barrel of a gun.
When you envision this fight, kind of what do you see some of the potentialities being between these two? What's up, guys? Laura Sanko here. As always, I am joined by Dean Thomas, the greatest mind in the UFC. But before I even let this man talk and drop his drips of wisdom on you, I have a request for you, the fans, okay? For the first time, we want to hear your opinions. We want to hear your thoughts on upcoming fights. So I want you to submit a 10 to 20 second-ish video to one-on-one combatsports@gmail.com, and we will compile them, and Dean and I will react to your thoughts, opinions, takes, whatever it may be on upcoming fights. So submit a video on 308, submit a video on 309. We will compile them, and we will get to know you, our fans, and we're very excited about it. Aren't we, Dean?
I'm very excited about it, and I want people to know that you can say whatever you want. In fact, I want you to try to challenge me.
Dean wants to get roasted.
No, yeah, I want to get roasted. I want to be challenged. I don't like just going off. Don't disrespect me now, because that's fighting words. We're gonna have to fight in the street.
No fight for drugs.
Challenge me. I want to know what your thoughts are. I want to know, if you think I'm just full of it. But go ahead and let us know what you think about our takes or whatever takes you have.
Yeah, whatever takes you have about upcoming fights. We want to get your analysis as well. I just sounded like I said your analysis. It is late. I am slap happy. I just said your analysis. You know what I meant. I did mean your analysis. Let's talk about this fight. The main event, UFC 307, the light heavyweight title on the line. Alex Pereira taking on number 8 ranked Khalil Rountree. I think for some people, this matchup was maybe a little bit of a surprise. Number 8 jumping up to take on the champion here. But Dean, what was your initial reaction when this matchup was made?
You know what? We can't be surprised in today's age of MMA because timing is everything. And what happens is that sometimes there's just no one else. And they need a title fight. Alex Pereira is always ready to fight. There was no one else. And it's easy to say there's no one else, but there was someone else. But he had already gotten booked for a fight. They could have used Magomed Ankalaev. But I don't think that was the fight to make in a situation like this in Salt Lake City. We needed Alex Pereira to fight a banger in Salt Lake City. They found the perfect dance partner for him, someone who's never shot a takedown before, someone who's going to go out there and bang with him. Now, in terms of when this fight first was announced, I was like, okay, it's going to be a pretty fun matchup. You got a guy who throws big punches. He's on a crazy winning streak. He's had some tough times in the UFC, but has showed some resilience to come back and put himself in a position to get a title shot. And let's face it, John Wood right now is hot. John Wood just took Merab Dvalishvili to a title, so he's hot right now. So, let's give him his opportunity to see what he can do.
I think Khalil's run right now is probably one of the more underrated runs that someone could be on in the UFC right now. And I think the people who had the knee-jerk reaction of like, what is this matchup, didn't take the time necessarily to go back and watch the run that he's been on. The knockout of Anthony Smith, the knockout of Chris Daukaus, which was nasty, the fight with Dustin Jacoby, very close, the knockout of Carl Roberson, and Modestas Bukauskas. I can't even watch that one without
where he kicked him in the knee.
Oh God, it's hard to watch. Khalil Rountree has, I don't know what he did to do it, but he figured himself out. I'll put it that way. He figured himself out. He figured out what he is about. And what he is about, apparently, is a high degree of violence. And I think these matchmakers knew exactly what they were doing. Like you said, putting this fight in Salt Lake, you had to have a fight that wasn't going to get boring, that wasn't going to get affected by altitude. And these are two guys who are going to go out there and they're going to have a kickboxing match, and it's going to be an excellent chess match, I think.
Well,
Go ahead.
listen, don't do my boy Anthony like that. You know what I'm saying? Me
I
and
don't
Anthony
think
had
you're
no,
any
no,
which
me,
way.
no, me and Anthony had a pretty good laugh about how he got knocked out in slow motion.
He did. I mean, listen, I didn't
He was
enjoy
like,
watching it. I called that fight. That was
whoa.
not fun. That was not fun at all. Not fun at all. Uh, what though, when you envision this fight, I think we can all agree that neither of them is going to look to grapple. But when you envision this fight, kind of what do you see some of the potentialities being between these two?
Okay, so here's my thing, Laura, is that I had that was my initial reaction, but then I had two different reactions up until yesterday. So my reaction from 2 weeks ago was that the stars were aligning for Khalil Rountree because he
Okay.
wasn't necessarily supposed to even be in this position, and he got this opportunity, and it just everything's going right for him. And to me, that's the MMA gods telling us, we're gonna take care of my people. When somebody does the right thing, we're gonna take care of them. And that was what I was thinking. I was like, Khalil Rountree, he's got the ability. He's got power in his hands.
Mhm.
He's fast. He's he he's athletic. He's explosive. He could catch him. He can catch him. There's no doubt about that. And he can do it early and never allow Alex to get started. And in my mind, I'm thinking, he's gonna catch him. That's what I was thinking 2 weeks ago. And
And
then
then,
yesterday I saw some damn embedded video where he's standing outside the UFC headquarters with his picture up, and he's so
oh,
excited to see himself.
you didn't like
And
that,
I
did
said,
you?
I didn't like that at all. I didn't like it. I mean, I like that he's vulnerable. No, don't get it twisted. It's not that I don't like that he's vulnerable, and I think that men can't show emotion. That's not what I'm saying. But what
Timing.
my issue was that he was just happy to be there
Yeah.
and not talking about, I'm happy to be here and now it begins.
Yeah.
I got a job to do. And I didn't get that impression from him. And when this fight goes long and gets into the deep waters, if it does, we're going to be looking at a man who's just happy to be here and not a man who's willing to die for a title. So that's my issue with this. I don't think he does very well.
Do you think it's a skill issue or a mentality issue?
I think it's going to be both eventually. Now, when you say skill, just because he might not be as skilled of a kickboxer as Alex Pereira doesn't mean he still can't win. It's all it takes
Sure.
is one punch, right? So
Sure.
I don't want people to get that twisted because God forbid I say, yeah, it's a skill issue. Then he knocks Alex out. He goes, oh, you said he wasn't as skilled. It
Well,
doesn't mean he's still not as skilled. He just caught him, right? And that happens. But I think it's a skill issue. I think he is at a disadvantage skill wise in terms of like understanding the nuances of kickboxing, and this is what this fight is probably going to be more of. And then also too from a mentality standpoint. Early on, I think he's going to be good. When his emotions run high, his gross
mhm,
motor skills are high. I think he's going to have. I think he may even be stronger earlier because of his gross motor skills kicking into effect. But I think as this fight plays out, and these guys are going to have to pace themselves a little bit because it is 5 rounds at altitude.
mhm.
I think that and then with all the distractions of the lights and him seeing himself so much and the media obligations, I think it's going to overwhelm him, and he's not going to do well. I think that's going to make his technique worse, and then mentally it's going to cause him to break.
It's an interesting take, and I can see where you're going with it. And I think that if you look back at maybe some of his previous losses, there's glimmers of what you're talking about. I'm fascinated to see if he has kind of been able to get rid of that in this 5 fight win streak and work some of those things out, or if, like you say, the lights, the media, all of the stuff is just going to be added on top of what is already an uphill battle in terms of a skill challenge. But before we go too much further, let me run through a couple of interesting stats here. I'm not going to go too deep, but I thought some of these were pretty interesting. Alex Pereira, 8-1 in the UFC. Khalil Rountree, 9-5. Alex is 6'4", Rountree 6'1". Pereira's 79-inch reach to Khalil's 76.5. Orthodox versus Southpaw, of course, for Khalil Rountree. There might be a little something there in terms of habits that we can think about for either of them. And then what I thought was really interesting is that Khalil actually has the higher knockdown rate at 1.66 per 15 minutes and 1.04 for Alex. But in terms of striking accuracy, Alex Pereira 63.8% accuracy and Khalil's just 39.5, which is actually a little bit below the UFC average of 42%. In terms of where they target, it's actually pretty even. But I was actually surprised to see the knockdown ratio for Khalil. And you go back and watch his highlights, man, that guy's powerful, incredibly
Well,
powerful.
you got to understand too, like you talk about that knockdown ratio. Part of it has to do with when Alex knocks a guy down, he knocks him out.
Fair
They
enough.
don't get back up, right? So
Yeah.
like, of course, and he hasn't had as many fights too.
Yeah.
So like, it's his he knock you down and put you out. And then Khalil's had more fights and more opportunities to knock
Yeah.
guys down repeatedly.
When I guess other than just a big shot early, do you see Khalil having success in this fight maybe because of the southpaw stance? That's something that kind of gets brought up at times when you talk about Pereira's game, because there are definitely moments, whether it's in the Izzy fight or whether it's when he has fought other exclusive southpaws, where maybe he looks slightly less magical than he does otherwise.
Well, I think that the southpaw issue was earlier in his career. And then I think in terms with Izzy, it's because Izzy switches stances, makes it a little bit harder to get the read on when Izzy's going to be southpaw. Izzy will pivot really quick and then just turn southpaw on a dime, so that it's harder to get that read. But I think he may have had problems earlier in his career, but going into a fight against a guy who doesn't have a lot of MMA experience, who's a big power puncher, who's a southpaw, they're pretty predictable. Like he's going to throw a right and a left. Like it's pretty predictable. His kicks are probably the biggest issue that I think that Alex is going to have to worry about,
A
because
body kick.
because he does kick well. Khalil does kick well,
Mhm.
but Alex is going to be prepared for that. There's no way he's not going to do his homework and be prepared for that and know which angles that he needs to step off of and stay away from the body kick and be able to attack Khalil and keep him off balance and probably put a little fear into Khalil. I think that's another issue that we don't talk about is, Khalil, he comes off as a really nice, sweet guy. He's like, I used to be 300 pounds. I used to smoke cigarettes. And it, in his heart, he's still that guy. He's still that sweet guy that used to do that. He just found something to get him out of this destructive lifestyle that he was living. But I
Mhm.
feel like when you get in front of a guy like Alex Pereira, he's staring at you and you staring down the barrel of a gun, there's something about you that's going to want to go back to the couch and be 300 pounds and just be like, you know what? That wasn't that bad of a life after all. Um, I think Alex is going to put a little fear in him and not allow him to get off.
Do you see Alex getting this done early?
I do. I think it's going to be early, and I think it's going to be pretty one-sided. If it's not one-sided on Alex's part, then it has to be one-sided and early on Khalil's part.
Mhm.
Because if the longer this goes, the longer Alex has to figure him out, it's going to be a wrap. I think Alex is going to very similar. Think of I'm thinking Alex and Sean Strickland, when he
Mhm.
just kind of figured him out and just said, I got this. Bat, 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 bat. I think it's going to be like that. I think he's going to his length, his frame. I think he's going to be able to impose his will on Khalil.
Hmm.
And, and again, we talk about orthodox southpaw. I think Alex's hand fighting from that orthodox stance is going to give Khalil problems. And then I think he's just going to be, and his speed, it's just going to be, I think it's going to be a long night for Khalil.
I'm glad you actually brought that up because I that was one of the things that, and I actually forgot to write it down here. But when you watch his early MMA fights, when he's dealing with a southpaw, you can kind of tell he's still sort of transitioning from those big gloves because he doesn't do the hand fighting nearly as well. And then when you watch his fights with Izzy, when Izzy goes southpaw, and later in his career, when anytime someone goes southpaw, those moments, he is so adept at controlling the space and putting physical controls on that lead hand and really using that lead hand play to his advantage rather than just having that big glove versus big glove. We're just going to kind of like bat each other a little bit. It's totally different in MMA than it is when you got the big gloves on, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's going to be a big part of what's going to kind of shake Khalil up.
Mhm.
Khalil's going to be a little confused at times and not know how to deal with that. I think he's gonna be like, yo, this was different. You know, you can train for somebody like that, but once you get in there with him and you feel it, you're like, this is a lot going on here. Not only is he controlling my hand, but he's also doing some weird things with his feet where he's standing on the outside of me where I can't get this body kick off. And then
Mhm.
before I know it, he punched me with the right hand. And then it's a guy like Alex, even though he's one dimensional, there's a lot of layers to that dimension.
Yes.
And Khalil's going to feel that.
One of the things I think is most underappreciated about Alexa's game, and maybe it's just because of the language barrier, because we as English speakers don't get to like fully interact with him when he's talking, is his intelligence, his fight IQ, and his not only just his fight IQ in terms of like making adjustments in a fight, in a round, even in a combination. But if you pull back his intelligence about the way he's handling his career, realizing that he's got to make hay while the sun is shining, get in there, fight as often as possible, get it done, get out, make money, go retire, be
Is
good.
that a farm reference? Are you?
Yes, yes, we do. We make hay while the sun is shining because you know what happens if it rains?
It
Your
turns
hay is
into.
ruined. You can't you can't bale wet hay. It'll explode and catch on fire and all that actually happens. Terrible thing. Anyway,
Oh.
look it up. Hay will just randomly combust
I
if it's
can't
if
believe I
it's
just got a
moist.
farm lesson
No one likes moist hay,
on
Dean. No one
one
likes
on one.
moist hay.
Yeah, on one podcast, I got a farm lesson.
Anyway, he's so smart about the way that he approaches things. And you said it earlier, it's the way that he figures guys out, the way that he lured Yuri into that head kick, the way that he knew the leg kick would be there the first time he fought Yuri and found it over and over and over again, the way that he set Sean Strickland up by getting him to react and pull his guard down. It's it's amazing watching him operate on a level that frankly no one else is operating on in this
Well,
division.
part of this has to do with his primary focus in a fight. When a lot of fighters fight, their primary focus, and you hear it in the language. You hear it in the language. The language is push the pace, uh, outwork them,
Mhm.
grind. Like those things to me, unless you're that type of fighter, those things to me can ruin a fighter because now you're no longer paying attention to the fight itself and making good decisions because your primary focus is just doing
Go.
something. Yeah, just go, just do something and see what happens. And to me, MMA, there's just too many ways to lose and too much room for error in order to operate like that. Now you got a guy like Alex Pereira who's very economical, very efficient, always makes good moves,
Mhm.
always makes good decisions in terms of I'm knocking you out or I'm knocking you down. And he's a prime example of do the right things and it's going to work out for you, as
Mhm.
opposed to just doing something and hoping that it works out for you.
Well, certainly 6 wins last 6 wins against former undisputed champions is a pretty insane resume to be rocking up to another title defense with. It's crazy to think who he has beat on his way to this moment. We think of him as sort of, getting here quickly, and he did, but the last 6 in a row have been tremendous wins over all former or current champions. Virtually unheard of, honestly, to be operating at that level time and time again. So I'm excited for this fight this weekend, Dean. It's going to be fascinating to see how this all plays out. Thank you so much for your time. I always appreciate your thoughts and your wisdom.
No. Thank you for having me. This is my favorite part of the week, breaking down these fights. I just can't wait till the fans chime in and let us know what they think.
I know. We got to send your submissions to oneononecombatsports@gmail.com. We will compile, we will react, and we look forward to it. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Click like, click subscribe. We appreciate you so, so much. And we'll see you at UFC 307.